Hello, YouTube. You never know what you can find in Siberia. I'll give you an example, and it's a very interesting example that more people should know about. The Malta site of ancient people shocked the scientific world in cold Siberia, far from the centers of world civilization. A grandiose monument of antiquity was found, eclipsing many previous striking finds. Malta is a village located 85 kilometers west of the city of Irkutsk, 8 kilometers from Ussolye-Sibirsky, and it's located in the center of the Usolsky district of the Irkutsk region. Keep in mind, it's not that far away from the Tunguska event. The name Malta comes from the Buryat moikon, bird cherry or hackberry. Malta is a bird cherry place due to the abundance of bird cherry hackberry trees along the right bank of the Belaya River. The village of Malta is an archaeological heritage area. Malta was first mentioned in documents in the year 1683. People appeared here about 25 to 20,000 years ago, or even earlier, as evidenced by the excavations of a nearby Paleolithic site. In 1928, the Upper Paleolithic site of Malta was discovered by Gerasimov, a young employee of the archaeological department of the Museum of Local Lore, a future world-renowned anthropologist, and the site was studied by him until the year 1959. The remains of various dwellings that existed at the same site have been discovered, like light tomb-type dwellings, semi-underground shelters, and above-ground dwellings. The inhabitants of Malta hunted reindeer, mammoth, and woolly rhinoceros. Not far from Malta, about 2 kilometers from the bridge over the Belaya, or White River, on its left bank, a Paleolithic site was discovered, like I said, back in 1928. They actually discovered by the accident. Peasant Saveliev, having cut down a new 5 hut at the upper end of the village behind the church, began to dig underground. It was February and the ground was already giving way with difficulty, and then they had to dig up some kind of strangely shaped object. It turned out to be a flat bone of unprecedented size. They, local peasants, took the find to the to the hut where they did reading, so more or less education oriented room, and began to write to Irkutsk. On February 5, 1928, scientists in Irkutsk received a letter. In that subterranean place, bones of ancient animals, mammoths and rhinoceros, lay in a continuous layer among the remains of charcoal. Excavations continued until 1959. Stone tools, bone products, various ornaments, as well as many art objects were found. A child's burial with bone ornaments was also discovered, richly ornamented ornaments in the forms of buckles, buttons, pendants, tiaras, bracelets, engraved images of mammoths and snakes, sculptures of women, ducks, geese, loons, humans, rhinoceros, found at the campsite, allowed Malta to be attributed to the unique monuments of the Paleolithic era, and a distinctive art school that existed here for several millennia has occupied a prominent place in the original history of fine art. However, as far as we know, excavations continue at that site even to this day. Therefore, it is not surprising that some Malta residents still remember with an unkind word that peasant Savelyev, who tore off a mammoth bone in his basement, with which, in fact, everything that followed began. The Malta residents organized a museum and a one-story building of the former elementary school was adapted for it. The building is 108 years old, and it is in itself a cultural monument. However, there are practically no exhibits for the museum, especially those related to the Paleolithic site in Malta. Everything was taken to Moscow and St. Petersburg. Even the Irkutsk Museum of Local Lore received a few copies of the discoveries. Mikhail Gerasimov opened the area of the monument equal to 180 square meters. 21 to 23,000 years ago or earlier, there was a tundra on the site of modern Malta with herds of mammoths, rhinoceros, and bisons. That's where they roamed. Animal meat served as food, and primitive men built a dwelling out of bones and skins. The corners of this tomb-like dwelling were made of tiger bones. The walls were made of moose bones mixed with the fish and bird bones, and an open-work network of reindeer antlers was used as the roof. To keep warm, the skins were pressed down with massive skulls or mammoth tusks. Primitive people used shrubs for kindling, but animal bones served as the main fuel. In 1959, Mikhail Gerasimov completed the study of the Malta monument, but this does not mean that the excavations have stopped. Apparently, Gerasimov's undertaking was continued by his student and follower, Professor Archaeologist German Medvedev. The entire sequence of field studies of the Maltese, let's call it that way, location is divided into two large cycles, 1928 to 1958. That was Gerasimovsky, and 1981 to 2001 modern. At the modern stage, the work was carried out by the Irkutsk State University, the Limnological Institute of the Siberian branch of the Russian Academy of Sciences in Irkutsk, the Center for Preservation of Historical and Cultural Heritage of the Irkutsk region, Irkutsk State University, and the Royal Museum of Art and History in Brussels, Belgium, Irkutsk State University and Institute of Archaeology and Ethnography of the Siberian branch of the Russian Academy of Sciences through 2001. A total of 22 field seasons were held. In 2001, the work was resumed. During the construction of the Ussolye-Sibirsky bypass, objects from the Neolithic and Paleolithic periods were discovered. Archaeologists immediately joined this undertaking and conducted, the first stage of rescue archaeological work. The work area was 553 square meters. 168 pieces of archaeological and paleontological material were discovered. They were located in two cultural horizons. The age of the first is 4,000 to 7,000 years, Neolithic era. The second is 15,000 to 20,000 years, Paleolithic. And the head of the Service for the Protection of Cultural Heritage Sites, Vitaly Sokolov, said that the initial analysis showed that the sites are more ancient than the scientists initially assumed. Their age reaches 30,000 years. Now work has begun on the second archaeological site, the Malta Bridge 3 campsite, which will last about 3 years. The excavation area is 6 hectares, and the entire site occupies about 30 hectares. You can imagine what can be discovered there. And Malta is a sensational metropolis built according to radiocarbon dating 24,000 to 30,000 years ago. There are 15 dwellings thoughtfully located by the river, 90 kilometers from the present-day Irkutsk. There are light tombs made of reindeer antlers for the summer and semi-earthen shelters of the capital nature, so to say, made of mammoth bones for the winter. In the center, there was a communal house with an area of 14 by 5 meters. It is extremely interesting how things turned out to be distributed in the dwellings, writes anthropologist Stanislav Drobyshev in the book Tales from the Grotto. On the right side of the home lay male objects, axes, tips, daggers, figurines of birds, and on the left, female, knives, scrapers, needles, jewelry, statuettes of women. Yes, the Paleolithic Venuses, it turns out, were the property of ancient ladies. Perhaps these are not tribal fertility goddesses, as many researchers believe, but personal guardian spirits of the beautiful half of humanity at that time, according to Russian history explorer Vishnepolsky. The question is, where did the notion females belong to the left side come from? After all, our world still works that way. The queen's throne always stood to the left of the king's throne. Since the time of ancient Russia, Slavic huts were divided into two halves, and the women's were on the left. When an interested Russian male made his way to the ladies' quarters at night, it was called in Russian "schodit nalevo," or going to the left. We used this term in the USSR, I recall. During the wedding, the bride and groom stand in the church in exactly this order. The bride is to the left of the groom. Finally, and that's important, in Russian Christianity, the Mother of God in the iconostasis of Orthodox churches is always on the left. The Cyrillic alphabet portal presents convincing information, at least according to Vishnepolsky. In those eras when all self-respecting men carried guns, the lady was on the left, and it was the right thing to do. In case of danger, the gentleman's right hand was free, and he could immediately draw a weapon to rush to his companion's defense. Well, 24,000 plus years ago, people also walked in pairs. And in case of danger, the man on the right had to have free space so that the brave ancestor could draw his stone dagger. The rule became fixed, and dozens of figurines of Paleolithic Venuses were found in Malta. They were stored in special stone boxes, and those ancient beauties are radically different from the same Venuses in Western Europe and some other Russian ones. The Siberian Venuses of Malta, thin, with clearly distinguishable faces, beautiful hairstyles, and many of them flaunt furs. The craftsmen painstakingly depicted fur clothing with pits and grooves, hoods, warm jackets with aprons, trousers. Why is everything like this? First of all, it was very cold in Siberia even then. It has been established that the Maltese hunted Arctic foxes and wolves. They hunted mostly not for meat, but for pelts. And secondly, in those days, the division of humanity into groups was in full swing. In 2013, the results of the study of the skeleton of the boy in Malta 1 found in the campsite were published. The study showed its similarity to Europeans and American Indians, and the lack of links with modern East Asian populations. That's what the handbooks reported. That is, the Maltese did not stay in Irkutsk, but they moved on. America was first colonized by ancient inhabitants of what is Russia today. Upper Paleolithic Siberian genome reveals dual ancestry of Native Americans. Now for what I consider to be of main interest to my audience. A strange inventory was discovered in Malta. Carved sticks, plates with wavy lines, and concentric circles. A lot of bird pendants. Those concentric circles remind me of the strange and ancient labyrinths located in the Russian north, like the ones in the Kola Peninsula I described in my other videos. You can find them in my channel. It's very unusual. Many birds were suspended upside down, and I'm talking now about the Malta discoveries. And one was floating for some reason. Researchers believe that with the help of this set, the shaman told his tribe the traditional legend of the creation of the earth. A bird, most often a swan, dived to the bottom of the ocean, brought a pinch of silt in its beak, and now we have as many as 6 continents. It is curious that such an inventory is also a characteristic of the Volosova culture, communities of people who lived in central Russia and the Volga region in the 4th to 3rd millennium before Common Era. Plus, the swan is the main character in the generally lost mythology of the Pazyryk people. And that was Altai, 15th century before Common Era. By the way, in philosophy and Gnosticism, a demiurge is a craftsman-like being, often considered a subordinate deity, responsible for fashioning and maintaining the physical universe. In Plato's Timaeus, the demiurge shapes the world based on eternal forms. In Gnosticism, the demiurge is often portrayed as a flawed, even malevolent creator, distinct from the supreme, unknowable God. Echoes of the legend of the demiurge bird are found in North America, and Komi Permians still tell it. That's in Russia. Humanity was once a single friendly tribe with a set of myths familiar to everyone, at least some people believe it. Now look at the bird from Malta. It looks like a jet, aircraft, like Su-30. Where did they see such object 30,000 years ago? Maybe the same place where ancient people of Central and South America observed them, but much more earlier. I will continue to update you on fascinating Russian archaeological finds and its paranormal phenomena. You just remember this site Malta in Siberia. I'm sure we'll have more news from there. That's what I wanted to let you know today. If you like my research, please support it through the links you'll find in the description to this channel. Please like my videos. Please subscribe to my channel and tell others. Thank you.